Good morning, Indiana. Welcome to Who's Left This Week, the unapologetically progressive Sunday morning news and politics show for the Hoosier State. My name is Scott Aaron Rogers. I am broadcasting from Bloomington. We have got a couple of my favorite people here on the show as guests this morning, and we'll be welcoming them in here very shortly. But first, gotta make the quick ask. This is an independent media project. We don't paywall any of our content. We don't have advertisers. We certainly don't have any billionaire benefactors. Only individuals like you keep this thing going. It is a foundational principle of Who's Left and the larger Progressive Indiana network that we refuse to hide valuable information behind paywalls in the middle of a political crisis, even if that's not in our financial best interest. So please, if you find value in this work, and it is a lot of work, go to progressiveindiana.net and subscribe at the paid level. It's only $5 a month or $50 a year to help us build the infrastructure that will pop the right-wing media bubble in this state. And I get it. If a paid subscription is not in the cards for you right now, that's okay. You can still help out by liking and sharing our content on social media, commenting, leaving reviews, providing feedback, forwarding articles and interviews to your people. You get us the next time. Mostly, we just want you to be here in this community of Hoosiers dedicated to making this state and its government work for all of us, not just the elite few. Now, you can follow me on Blue Sky, Instagram, and Threads at who'sleft.us, and on Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube at Who's Left. Progressive Indiana Network's handle on most sites is the full spelled out name, but on Blue Sky and TikTok, it's PIN Indiana. Please help us grow with a follow wherever you're at. Tell the others. Let's build a radically democratic Indiana together. Now, let us welcome in our guests. First, a wearer of many, many hats, the executive director of Washington County Community Action Coalition, Chief of Staff to the 9th District Democratic Party, Secretary of her County Democratic Party, and Secretary of Indiana Rural Summit, Regional Coordinator for Organizing Indiana, the Human Hat Rack, Renee Mather.
Oh my God. And they're all volunteer. You know, you'd think I'd figure out by now how to do something that got paid one day.
Yeah, I feel that deeply, Renee. Thank you for joining me. I love having you here. It has been far too long.
It has. It's been a little busy, but here we are.
Yeah, you keep taking on more jobs.
There's too much to do to save the world, Scott. There's too much to do.
I hear you. Well, you know what? Somebody else out there doing their best to save Indiana or save the world or his little corner of Indiana, whatever. Our good friend, candidate for State Senate District 47. Welcome back, Ethan Sweetland-May. Ethan, welcome.
Hey, Scott, thanks for having me on. Man, hearing Renee's list of activities, I was like, maybe running for office isn't enough. Like, maybe I should be doing more.
I am also running for office, actually.
You are? Yeah, that's right.
It's not on my list there, but I am.
Yeah.
Well, gee, you guys put me to shame wearing all those hats. I thank you both. I love having you as a pair. I think the last time you were each on,
yes,
it was with each other.
It was.
I love this little lineup. A lot to talk about today. Let us go ahead and get to it. And we're going to start with the passing of a giant in American politics. So the Reverend Jesse Jackson passed away this week, dying at his home in Chicago on Tuesday at age 84 after years of declining health. He was the most influential African-American political voice in the decades between Martin Luther King Jr. and Barack Obama. He came up through the civil rights movement in the 1960s, joining Dr. King's inner circle, and was present at the Lorraine Motel in Memphis when King was assassinated in 1968. He spent much of the rest of his life trying to finish what King had started. He ran for president twice in 1984 and 1988, becoming the first black candidate to mount a serious, sustained challenge for a major party nomination. In 1988, he won 13 primaries and caucuses and nearly 7 million votes before the party establishment coalesced around Michael Dukakis. His Rainbow Coalition, a multiracial alliance of poor and working class Americans bound by economic interest, became a template for the modern progressive movement. His convention speeches became landmarks of American political oratory. His two presidential campaigns directly opened the door for Obama. Georgia Congressman John Lewis, who in many ways came to surpass Jackson as the most admired living civil rights leader, said so at the time. Obama confirmed it this week, saying, quote, "We stood on his shoulders." Internationally, he was an early and forceful advocate for sanctions against apartheid South Africa, for Palestinian rights, and against the Iraq War, positions that became a blueprint for the American left's foreign policy thinking. Now, his career was not without serious controversy. Members of King's own inner circle accused him of embellishing his role in King's final moments and using the assassination to position himself as King's successor. Later came anti-Semitic remarks, personal scandals, and a persistent criticism from allies and opponents alike that his ego and appetite for the spotlight often overshadowed his cause. Never held meaningful elected office, and some argue that's the central tension of his legacy, a moral leader of the First Order operating in an era that increasingly demanded political ones. Now, you guys, I think, are each a couple years younger than I am, so I think we all came up maybe slightly after Jackson's peak, at a point in which maybe he was caricatured in many ways. How do you guys remember Reverend Jackson? Renee?
Oh, Scott, why you start with me? Okay, so the thing that you get when you get Ethan and I is we both have the same church trauma. So like, unfortunately, when I was a youngster, there wasn't a lot kind said about Reverend Jackson in the circles that I was in. I see Ethan shaking his head. And what I've had the pleasure of doing is, once I grew up, kind of took off the not rose-colored glasses. I won't call them those. The worldview that I was given. Yeah. I did a lot of research and have a tremendous amount of respect for Jesse Jackson, what he did, what he stood for, the people that he chose to speak up for. And I think every single person who is doing those things in the world deserve to be celebrated. And so I have more to learn, but everything I hear and have learned so far is just, I have admiration. And I think that one of the things that we should do in our communities is share those things. Like as we come out, because I know I'm not alone. I literally know I'm not alone. Ethan, what do you? I know you know.
You're right. And one thing that is a big outlier in my upbringing, because everyone and I come from very similar backgrounds, is that, and I always give my dad his laurels for this. My dad was an ardent anti-imperialist from day one. And so even though we were in this very conservative movement, even though we were in a very kind of religious background, we were the only family in our homeschool group that was vocally and publicly against the Iraq and Afghanistan invasions. My dad always had his finger on the pulse of the imperial instincts of a branch of the American legacy. And the first time I ever remember seeing Jesse Jackson, of course I didn't know who he was Sesame Street. And I'm sure everybody's seen that clip go around, especially because it's being circulated here when it's him saying, "I am somebody," and getting his kids to say, "I am somebody." I have no idea who this man is. And it's a rerun of Sesame Street, right? Yeah. Because there were not a lot of approved shows for me growing up, but Sesame Street we could watch. And I remember my dad seeing that and making just some offhand comment about Reverend Jesse Jackson marching with Martin Luther King. And I was like, oh. And that was literally the only thing I knew about Jesse Jackson growing up. And then when I started learning about apartheid South Africa and, towards the end of my high school career, I learned, about his role in it. And so, I mean, it's fascinating how, at least to me, the impact of people that are willing are always on the front lines of these social issues, of justice, of pursuing it in areas where there's a lot of controversy and conflict. I know that out of apartheid, out of the people who fought apartheid in South Africa, the conflict with other apartheid states or other states that have strong authoritarian governments towards minorities, and the accusations that get thrown around there, and the danger of, do you go too far or have you overstepped? I think that's all really interesting. And it just kind of highlights that real boats rock, real people are messy. The legacy of pursuing real justice will never look tidy. And especially as I hear some of some of the fresh, the old criticisms of Jesse Jackson getting brought up, I just always hope that we have the courage to do what we believe is right and be willing to accept the criticism and consequences that come with it and make wise decisions moving forward. And I really see that as part of his legacy. This was a man who was always on the front lines of justice and pursuing what was right. And you see that, he stepped in it sometimes, and he was criticized. And I just hope we all are able to embrace that kind of legacy of accepting criticism whenever we overstep and not letting that stymie us from pursuing justice where we see it needs to be pursued.
Yeah. And, people are messy, right? We're all people. Everybody's got their own stuff. But if you get to the core of it, the message is what resonated. And certainly, the civil rights message, but also, like you said, the anti-imperialist message. And then I've been thinking a lot about the places where the Democratic Party reached a fork in the road in the 1980s. And you think about Bill Clinton and the Democratic Leadership Council and the more corporate wing of the party being ascendant at that time. Jackson criticized that. He wanted to take the party in a more working class direction. He criticized the DLC as Democrats for the leisure class.
That's
and
right.
We're very much still having that fight today. Put a pin in it. We're going to come to that later.
Can I say one more thing?
Renee.
Okay, so I also want to say, even when I was younger and felt like there should be more being done, I remember having the thought, if Jesse Jackson shows up, then something's going to be done. So if that is a core takeaway, right? I know we're speaking to adults here, but even when Ethan brought up Sesame Street, I was born in Pennsylvania. We were broke. I had no cable. So PBS was, helped raise me.
Yeah.
Mr. Rogers. And I remember that. And if we're raising the next generation, it is things like that get instilled. Like Ethan remembers his dad saying that he walked with Martin Luther King. And I remember thinking, even when I didn't agree with what I was hearing in my own home, it was like a comfort knowing if Jesse Jackson was there, that something right was going to be done.
Mm-hmm.
He understood the attention economy before that phrase existed. And for better or worse, you need to be able to draw attention to issues if you do want to get anything done. So let's talk about something that has been taking up a lot of folks' attention lately, in a way, swallowing all the oxygen in the room for the last several months. But we got to talk about it and move on to this week in the Epstein files. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, formerly Prince Andrew, having been stripped of his royal title, was arrested Thursday, pictured there, at his home on the Sandringham estate on suspicion of misconduct in public office, marking the first arrest of a senior royal family member in modern history. It's been like 400 years. He was released under investigation the same evening. This arrest stems from allegations that he shared sensitive government information with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein during his time as a UK trade envoy, including confidential briefings on official visits to Asia and investment opportunities in Afghanistan. This based on documents released by the Justice Department. Now, King Charles, Andrew's brother, expressed deepest concern, but said the law must take its course and gave police his full support. Neither he nor Buckingham Palace were informed of the arrest in advance. We should note that Andrew was arrested for insider trading and financial misconduct and not anything to do with his alleged sex crimes. Now, another man who is very much tied into this Epstein web is Les Wexner, Ohio's richest man and the founder of a retail empire, including Victoria's Secret and Abercrombie and Fitch. He built enormous civic and political power over decades, funding campaigns, shaping development, and putting his name on institutions across the state. Now, Wexner gave Epstein sweeping control over his financial affairs in the late 80s, released Justice Department documents named Wexner as a possible co-conspirator in Epstein's crimes. Now, Wexner insists he was defrauded and had no knowledge of Epstein's criminal activity. Politicians across Wexner's home state of Ohio are scrambling to return his donations. His name is being considered for removal from buildings, and the House Oversight Committee deposed him this week. Now, out in New Mexico, they have reopened a criminal investigation into Epstein's Zorro Ranch, a thousands of acre property where multiple women say they were abused as minors, after federal agents apparently never searched it at the time of Epstein's arrest. The state legislature has also unanimously approved a truth commission tasked with filing a public report by year's end. The ranch's history is now further complicated by the revelation that a limited liability corporation tied to Don Huffines, a former Texas Republican state senator currently leading the primary race for Texas comptroller, purchased the property a couple years ago for an undisclosed sum. Huffines' campaign says the family bought it at a public auction, the proceeds of which benefited Epstein's victims and had no prior connection to the property. Now, it's a big club, man. Turns out Huffines' son, Russell, has served as Associate Director of Agency Outreach in the White House Office of Cabinet Affairs since June of 2025. Huffines is heading into early voting with a steady lead in the comptroller race and the property acquisition, which his own representatives argued was devalued by the ranch's notoriety, is now public, just as Epstein-related documents continue to implicate powerful figures across the political spectrum. Now, Renee, if you look at Andrew here, is very indicative of most of the consequences that people are facing for most of the consequences people are facing for their involvement with Epstein's happening over in Europe. What do you make of that?
Okay. So everybody else, okay, hang on. Let me rephrase. There are certain countries that we had good relationships with up until we got the administration 2.0, right? And so there are countries doing the right thing. And I want to point out with the Epstein and Andrew thing, it's like when, oh gosh, now, okay, I lost it, but he's not being charged with the right things yet. I don't know why we're afraid to say these people were pedophiles and they did sexual crimes and they need to be put away. Like, I don't know why there is a hesitation there, because I see France is doing the right thing. Europe is doing the right thing. And who are we aligning with right now? The people who we see it, right? Like, Russia, China, I'm grateful. I am grateful that in our world, there is a country stepping up to do the right thing. And France has done the right thing before for us. France, I know we're talking about England though, but be the example right now. It's Europe, right? I am here for everybody who's ready to call it out before us. I wish we were leading the world on this stage in the best way instead of this embarrassing way.
France is investigating their oligarchs beyond just Epstein. They're looking into Elon Musk. Norway has arrested their former prime minister for involvement with Epstein. You're seeing consequences in like Slovakia and places like that. But it's ironic, right, that Andrew was arrested for financial crimes, not the alleged sex crimes. And you look at here, right? It seems like you can get away with whatever until you mess with people's money.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at somebody like Wexner in Ohio and how this guy had massive influence over his state, his little city of New Albany. There's a link to that article in the show notes. Like, he basically built this thing from the ground up, the suburb centered around him. It revolved around him. I think it just goes to show these people have too much damn money, Ethan.
Yes. And as we know, those of us raised in the tradition, and many of us raised outside of it, the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. And like, I love this picture of former Prince Andrew. It takes me to Arrested Development, when like Job being like, I've made a terrible mistake. Like, I'm just like, you were saying, like, it's all fun and games until you mess with people's money. It's not just people's money, it's the state's money, right? Andrew is not arrested because he stole money from his friend. The state is involved because he sold and shared classified state secrets and documents and all that kind of thing. It couldn't be a better example of how our laws are designed to protect the powerful and not designed to punish pedophiles and punish abusers. And I say that as somebody who I don't believe that punitive laws in and of themselves make society better. I think that a punitive approach to things is short-sighted generally, and mostly about vindication and, a sense of catharsis. But damn, I'm ready for some catharsis, Scott. It is in everybody who is a remotely trustworthy person has had a woman disclose to them a story about being abused or about being assaulted. Like, if you are somebody that has never had a woman tell it to you, you probably aren't trustworthy. Throwing that out there. Like, you can't or you're like 10 and you shouldn't know that. And so, like, the prevalence of this and the way that everything about the Epstein class and the Epstein files is the sickening confluence of money and power protecting each other. It's just, I love the term apocalypse, because an apocalypse is not about the end of the world, but it is the end of a world. And because of its revelatory nature, it's peeling back the curtain and showing you the monstrous things that are happening, that have been hidden from you, that have been intentionally hidden from you. And that is what we are seeing with this. And it's why we're seeing, like the fact that there's still this standoff in the United States where the rich and the powerful know that they're going down for this. They know they went to his parties. They know they took his money. They know they gave him money. And every one of them is looking at each other. It's like, don't rat on me, man. I know you were there too. Don't say anything. Don't bring these indictments. And that's my read on this right now. We are seeing the president's cabinet, the president, and all of his supporters and rich people being like, don't do it, bud. Don't do it. If you fold, I fold. And I'm like, fold.
Yeah, well, Renee,
it's
a big club, right? I mean,
it is.
How it cannot be a coincidence. I don't want to be conspiratorial, but like, how the hell is the guy that now owns Epstein's ranch, his kid is working in the White House? There are no coincidences.
No. There was a statement made, something I heard earlier this week that said the what was going on didn't just stop because Epstein got arrested and died, right? So my personal, like, when somebody said that, I'm like, okay, so where are we looking, right? What are we looking at? Because in order for it to be taken down, I want the apocalypse, right? I want take down, remove the house of the cards from the bottom so that we can have it crumble quickly, right?
Take down.
But where is it? Like, where is it happening now? What does restorative justice look like, right? Because this does, as the woman in the panel here, yes, survivor essay, right? The incredibly touches close to home right now with a situation personally, right? Like, I want justice. I cannot imagine what some of these families, I mean, this touches the whole world. And to go back to your the initial question, this is not just America. This touched the entire world. And how do we call it out, rebuild well, bring justice, and speak for those voices? And like, if you've been to my office, I know you've both heard me say this. It's not one voice. There has been one voice in the darkness, right? There has been. Thank God there's always been someone screaming truth. And I find in this moment, now I have all the goosebumps, that we are finding each other so that we don't just have one voice. We have 100 voices in a town. We have 1,000 voices in a county. We have 10,000 voices in a state. We've got 1 million voices across the nation. And people are starting to speak that together. And I think that is a way forward. I think that's a way forward, because we're going to have to rebuild it, and there's something happening still anyway. So,
and it's going to have to be all the people of the world. This stuff does not stop at national borders. Epstein's network didn't stop at national borders. Like you said, he had nodes in Europe, he had nodes in Russia, he had nodes in Israel. I'm sure we'll find nodes in China when all is said and done. You know, it's crazy, but it's a big club, and you ain't in it. And you know what? Frankly, I'm glad. I don't want to be in that club. So,
can I say one last thing?
One last thing.
So, one of my favorite sayings is, how do you change the world? You start by changing your world. Right. And there have been times when I see what's gone on in Sudan or Ethiopia, or and it feels so far away. This feels so big. But if each person does the one thing that affects their world, we will overcome this and be able to rebuild. I do believe that.
Yeah, and I think rebuilding is going to involve democratizing the economy. Let's talk about the economy next. So we got numbers this week that show the U.S. economy grew at an annualized rate of just 1.4% in the fourth quarter of 2025. That's well below the prior quarter's 4.4%. Driven by slowing consumer spending, flat retail sales, and rising credit card debt, while the broader picture remains complicated by inflation still above the Fed's 2% target and a labor market that was near paralyzed for much of last year, leaving the Federal Reserve caught between its dual mandate of to control inflation and maximize employment, with the interest rate cuts not expected until June at the earliest. The interest rates, the slowing employment, and the continued inflation, that is getting on towards stagflation, a situation you do not want to run into now. No. The part of this has to do with Trump's willy-nilly tariffs that he's been implementing much of last year, but this week in a 6-3 ruling that scrambled the court's usual ideological lines, the SCOTUS struck down Trump's sweeping tariffs, with 3 conservative justices, Roberts, Gorsuch, and Barrett, joining the court's 3 liberals to hold that the 1977 International Emergency Economic Powers Act never gave the president authority to impose them. Chief Justice Roberts wrote that the word regulate in the law cannot be read to include the power to tax, and that Congress, not the president, holds the constitutional power to impose tariffs. While the 3 dissenting conservatives, the usual murderers row, Kavanaugh, Thomas, and Alito, sided with Trump, Gorsuch and Kavanaugh used their respective concurring and dissenting opinions to take pointed shots at each other's reasoning, leaving unresolved whether the federal government must now refund the more than $200 billion already collected. Now, following this ruling, this question is wide open. Hundreds of companies, including Costco, have already filed suit, but the court offered no guidance on repayment. Trump has signaled he has no intention of moving quickly, and Senator Elizabeth Warren has pointed out that while large corporations can lawyer up and sue, there is no legal mechanism for consumers or small businesses to recover what they paid And within hours of the ruling, Trump announced a new 10% global tariff by executive order, raising fresh questions about whether any refunds would be rendered moot. Now, Trump, additionally, the next day, raised the stakes, saying, you know what? Let's make it 15%. He's throwing a tantrum. It is childish. What do you do with this guy, Renee?
I have
No
5
one's ever going to
kids.
see any of these refunds, are we?
Oh my God, no. Listen, I got 5 kids. I have watched them throw a tantrum, both as toddlers and let me tell you about teenagers. They are toddlers with hormones and vocabulary. And it's like,
Beautiful.
Trump, the scariest part of this for me is there is still a massive swath of people who think that because he says it and he puts it on social media, that it is gospel truth. Okay. And the thing is, we do have some guardrails of democracy holding, right? The SCOTUS doing the right thing. I love JD Pritzker's letter. He's like, okay, so now you owe us, right? And we're never going to see that. But that's not the point. The point is what did we just say? Money is the root of all evil. However, if you get into people's pockets, they pay attention, right? And so with Pritzker's letter, what he was saying is he was bringing attention to the people who maybe wouldn't pay attention to this by saying, hey, your president and this administration owes you money because they took from you. We know we're not going to see that, but he was drawing attention to it. And if, we have that whole swath of people who think that because Trump said it, that it's done. And if you're going to get them to pay attention to truth, you have to play that game a little bit, right? I'm thankful that SCOTUS did the right thing. Mm-hmm. We're never going to see that money. But I am hopeful that there are enough wise people out there who are going to hold the line so that we don't pay $14 for an apple.
Yeah. Okay. Ethan, we were talking about this with the Epstein stuff, right? And how Andrew, his consequences are for financial crimes and not the alleged sex crimes. Well, look,
Al Capone.
The Supreme Court will let Trump do whatever the hell he wants, but tariffs start messing with the economy, then they're going to put the brakes on them. Right. What do you think about
that? It's frustrating. And I mean, it's frustrating as, tariffs are a really important tool in our national economic toolbox. Alexander Hamilton, I'm sorry, used tariffs wisely to protect infant industry in the United States after we separated from Britain. And the thing is, every Western country that now is like, free markets are what it's all about, it's how we got rich, are all lying. Every single wealthy Western country used tariffs to protect industries that they wanted to flourish in their countries so that they could build up their technology. And then once they had a level of supremacy and control that they wanted, they're like, free trade is awesome. And so that's a whole other conversation. But it is part of this in that the way Trump is using tariffs is like a contractor who is convinced that the miter saw is the tool for everything. Are we planing this countertop? Miter saw. Are we installing a toilet? Miter saw. And it's just like, are you crazy? This house sucks. You can't sit on the toilet. The counters are like this the whole way down because you tried to level them by sliding them under a miter saw. It's horrible. And we're seeing it drive up the price of everything. We're seeing it the only thing that can remotely be said to look good are the industries that Trump is personally profiting from and the people in his circles are profiting from. AI, crypto. These are like the things that are keeping our economy afloat right now. And all he has to do for a certain segment of his policy is for a certain segment of his supporters to say, I'm tariffing all the people that have been stealing from us. But I don't think it's holding water like it did at the start of 2025. I think we are seeing people be like, but why is everything still so expensive? And why is the economy suck? And why is our houses so expensive? It's like I don't want things to be bad. I just want people to realize that why things are bad, and I need people to like see this before we start to turn the ship around. So you can be like, I need you to understand why we got here. It doesn't help if you put your hand on the stove and then stumbled backwards and hit your head on the wall, and you're like, I hit my head on the wall. It's why my hand got burned. It's like, no, I need you to understand that empowering psychopaths to control our economy was a really bad idea. And if you use tariffs like this, it's really bad for our economy. So yeah, we're always going to be in a fight against centralized that confluence of power and money. And Renee, to your point, like, I don't know if we're ever going to see a dime of the money that's been taken from us, but I mean, we can like Trump is, pumping Venezuelan oil and the profits into his accounts outside of the control of Congress. This money can be seized. We can do things to punish the rich and the powerful and take back the resources they're stealing from us, like Chuck Lutnick's son shorting the tariffs so that he can make windfall profits whenever the tariffs are reversed, like they just did. He's going to get 5-6 times the payout now that the tariffs are being reversed. Again, money that's taken from us is never coming back to us.
Yes. Well, hey, let's talk about empowered psychopaths, like you said. Listen, this next one's a long section, so we're going to break it up a little bit. Now, we've got a creeping authoritarianism problem in this country. We are verging on something that political scientists would call competitive authoritarianism, where you still have elections and stuff, but the thumb is very much on the scale. If you look at a place like Hungary and Viktor Orban, or Russia and Vladimir Putin. So let's talk about the ways that we are seeing this authoritarian creep in this country. You've got the continued presence of Trump's secret police, that is ICE, right? Now, as you know, we are in the midst of a partial government shutdown involving the Department of Homeland Security. A dispute over warrant requirements is blocking a deal to end this shutdown. Democrats are refusing to restore DHS funding unless Republicans agree to require ICE to obtain a judicial warrant signed by a judge before entering private property, rather than the administrative warrants ICE agents currently approve themselves. A policy shift that critics say violates the Fourth Amendment protections for citizens and non-citizens alike. Now, we recall in Minnesota, they were under terror and threat for weeks. Now, despite Tom Homan announcing a drawdown of the immigration surge in Minnesota, in Minneapolis in particular, their mayor, Jacob Fry, says the operation is not over. ICE agents remain active in the city. Residents are still too terrified to leave their homes after months of enforcement actions, and observers on the ground report that agents appear to have shifted their focus from immigrants to the legal observers and clergy who have been filming and monitoring their operations. And also this week, there was outrage over a 2-month-old being discharged from the hospital and abandoned by ICE, sent to the border with their mother. Gross stuff. Now, like I said, we are under a partial government shutdown, staying in Congress. Democrats are against something called the Save America Act that Republicans are trying to push through. This would require proof of citizenship to register to vote and photo ID to cast a ballot. It has cleared the 50 vote threshold in the Republican Senate and has already passed the House, but faces near certain defeat by filibuster, as Democrats are unified in opposition, and key Republicans, including Susan Collins, have made clear they won't eliminate the 60 vote threshold. Now, Trump has threatened to impose the requirements by executive order ahead of the midterms regardless, though a federal court already permanently blocked a similar executive order he signed last March, with the judge ruling that the Constitution reserves election regulation for Congress and the states, not the president. So let's take a break here before we move on to the next thing and examine this part of the authoritarian creep. And I'm going to start with Ethan and then work back to Renee. Ethan.
Holy cow, Scott. Yeah, we probably should break that up into a couple of pieces, but I mean, kind of working backwards, the SAVE Act is a mass voter disenfranchisement. That's what it is. People are like, well, we have voter ID. Why can't we have voter ID laws where you have you're required to show ID? It's like, that's not just what the SAVE Act is. The SAVE Act is not just a voter ID law. It is a law because, and I know you guys know this, I'm just reiterating it. It's like the SAVE Act, it requires that you prove citizenship, which is the United States has never had a single document that is like, this is what citizens have, because historically we've kind of frowned on that kind of thing. We know that like a papers please society is not good. Mm-hmm. There's something about that just it doesn't sit well. There's like a whole bunch of like millions of GIs turning in their graves, and so we never had a document that does that. And one of the things in the SAVE Act is that your birth certificate name has to match the name on your ID. And for about 69 million women who have either been married or have been divorced, those two things don't match. And so if they don't match, you need like a passport, which overwhelmingly people don't have. More than 50% of the country doesn't have a passport, and it's $140
expensive to get.
Yes, and it's tough to get. It amounts to a poll tax. So the SAVE Act sucks. It is pure voter suppression and disenfranchisement to solve a non-existent problem. As the Heritage Foundation, the conservative of conservatives, the Project 2025 lovers, Heritage Foundation showed conclusively when they went to prove that voter fraud was a problem and that non-citizens voting was a problem. This was their objective, to raise doubt about the security of our elections. And they found, and I just checked this out a little bit ago, they found that 0.00007% of all ballots cast in monitoring decades in over 7 states were fraudulent. And that includes they weren't cast the right way, they weren't, that person wasn't registered there, and, some non-citizen voting. It's like 7 out of every 10 million ballots cast were fraudulent.
Yeah. And let's not even talk about like who's casting those ballots illegally. A lot of times it's like MAGA supporters who are convinced they're fraud. So it's like, oh, well, if they're doing it, we got to do it ourselves.
Right.
Right. Renee, what do you make of this ICE stuff? They say they're leaving, right? They're not leaving. We know what's going on here. It's all PR. It's dangling the keys, look over here, and then they're still doing the damn thing.
Right. So our budget, they passed the amount of money going to ICE is like the bigger than any other military force in the world. Like,
the shutdown's not affecting them at all. They've got billions and billions of dollars they can still draw on, right?
Right. Have we learned nothing like from World War II? I mean, my only hope here is that when you look back to 1933 Germany, right? Anybody who knows history, we have more technology to communicate faster. When we lived in Vermont, I lived across the street from this woman who lived in Germany. And often I would say, how did you not know? Right? Like one of the questions, how did you not know what was going on? And so one day I was at her house and I asked her, what was going on? What was it like? What was World War II Germany like for you? Because she married a military American who was in the military, moved to the United States. And she said that until the Gestapo came to her neighbor's house, they lived in the middle of nowhere in Germany. It had gone on for years. It was about, I think she said 2 months before the liberation. Okay.
Oh, wow.
2 months before. And the Gestapo comes to her neighbor's house. She was outside working in the garden, looks next door and sees her neighbors lined up and get shot.
Oh my.
At that point is when she realized what was going on. Okay. And if you look at that, 2 months before liberation. And what stuck with me was that she was like, it wasn't on the radio. They were poor, lived in the middle of nowhere, right? It wasn't, they had one radio. It wasn't there. There was no information.
And they were getting propaganda, right? They weren't getting the truth.
I'm coming back to the question. I feel like, yes, we're touching that similar moment, but because of things like this podcast, news, we've got how many telephones were on Renee Good and Alex Peretti and all of that, right? They're trying to silence, but they can't silence fast enough. So I believe that I'll share a picture with you guys. I know I can't share it with everybody, but there's Justice. It was a little cartoon drawing. It said Justice. And then in America, we have Just Ice. And it's like, okay, for now, but no, right? Because like I said, again, I feel like we're in this magnet moment of people coming together, lifting their voices, holding their phones bravely, calling things out, sharing information. And to that, I do want to add that Blythe Potter has on her website there's a document you can get to that you can get a discounted passport. Sharing the information, like about how to get, I told my husband, we've been married 24 years. I was like, I might go back to my maiden name because if they try to take my chance to vote, I'm not here for that. And then Blythe told me that there's a discounted way to get your passport. And, you know, if they do pull this SAVE Act baloney, I almost said a bad word. Sorry.
Say whatever you want here, Renee.
Informing people of, I hope we stand up against it and democracy holds. Okay.
Yeah.
If it doesn't, you know, the Republicans are going to shoot themselves in their own foot because people don't pay attention to that anyway. So go, you know, but if we inform people, hey, get your passport, here's what's going on, here's how we can stand up to it, or here's what we do if they try to pull this shit anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah.
So let's stay on this about on the authoritarian creep. You know, you mentioned this woman in Germany who, you know, didn't have a way to get the accurate truth, and you can see the Trump administration trying to control the media now, weaponizing the Federal Communications Commission. So CBS blocked late night host Stephen Colbert from airing an interview with Texas State Senate candidate James Tallarico. Citing the FCC's equal time rule, a provision dating to the Radio Act of 1927 that requires broadcasters to offer equal time to all candidates in a race. Now, talk shows have been exempt from this rule since 1959, but FCC chair and Trump sycophant Brendan Carr recently issued new guidance reinterpreting that exemption, specifically targeting late night and daytime talk shows. Now, critics, including the FCC's sole Democratic commissioner, argue this is government intimidation, not legitimate regulation, and note that CBS's parent company, Paramount, has active regulatory matters before the Trump administration, raising serious questions about why the network chose not to fight back. Colbert put it bluntly. While Carr said in January he was thinking about eliminating the talk show exemption, CBS generously did it for him. Now, this attempt to suppress the interview backfired spectacularly. Colbert aired it on YouTube instead, where it drew over 7.3 million views as the time I wrote this script. I'm sure it's more since then. And on that platform alone, and 85 million views across all social media, far more than the show's average broadcast audience of 2.3 million. Tallarico raised $2.5 million in the 24 hours after Colbert revealed the interview had been blocked, his single best fundraising day, with early voting in the Texas Democratic Senate primary just 2 weeks away. Now, it's not just Colbert. The pressure campaign doesn't stop there. The FCC has also opened a formal enforcement action against ABC's The View over a separate Tallarico appearance, a show Carr had previously suggested investigating because its hosts are frequently critical of Trump. Carr called watching the Colbert fallout probably one of the most fun days I've had on the job. Is that that what you're supposed to do there, buddy? Sit back and eat your popcorn while you implement fascism? Ethan, go.
Oh, yes, it is truly like, I love this about America. America has, we have so many cool things about us. We have so many unacknowledged like problems. But like, say no, tell us you can't do it. Tell us that like, well, you're not allowed, and watch people like, what? So the efforts of like to censor Tallarico, to crack down on Colbert, right? Obviously 20-30% of the population doesn't matter. They're never going to care. They believe in the social media posts of the president, and that's all they care about, right? But for significant portions of the country, this is like, what? You're doing what? You're saying you can't do what? I always think of, I always comes to mind the I think it was under Giuliani. It might not have been Giuliani, but they tried to pass in New York City. They tried to pass a ban on like 48 ounce soda cups. Do you remember this?
Yes.
Yeah,
It was under Bloomberg. Yeah,
Bloomberg. That's right. Thank you. Yeah, they tried to pass the ban on the big soda cups, and it because it's killing you. It's actually killing you. It's a horrible, horrible thing. The human body was not designed to consume 2,000 grams of high fructose corn syrup in a sitting. And New York City said, hell no. Like the SNL did a piece on it, and like the guy was like, they're like, yeah, New York City tried to be like, maybe don't drink soda out of a bucket, and they're like, hey, he's trying to take our soda buckets. Like, so like coming after Stephen Colbert, who even people in the middle and on the right, like, think Colbert is funny, see Colbert do stuff and they like him, believe in his sincerity, and to be targeting his show, interviewing James Tallarico, like maybe one of the most wholesome people to run for an office ever. Like,
yeah.
I mean,
both of those guys are very much, people of faith. They speak about it frequently.
Yes.
They're, Colbert is honestly a remarkably conservative individual. He's got this reputation as a big liberal, and obviously when you're standing up to the Trump administration, that's going to be burnished even further. But Renee, I think Ethan speaks something here that may be our saving grace as Americans, and it's that F you don't. You don't, I don't do what you tell me kind of attitude, yes. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, back to the 5 kids thing. If you want them to do something, you tell them that they're not supposed to do it, or they can't.
Oh my God.
No, seriously, that's a great point. So if I'm being completely honest, I loved the interview. I loved what Steven said the next night. He got on and read the letter by the lawyers at the beginning of his show. And he's like, they said not to read this. And they passed me a letter. And then he reads it because he's like, legally, I am absolutely allowed to read this letter. And, oh man, I'm just like, I'm sitting there. If it weren't for Stephen Colbert at night, I don't think I could sleep. But, maybe I have a question here, but like, I like Jasmine Crockett too. So for a second, it took me, I was like, wait, what's going on? And I watched the interview they did with her saying, hey, your opponent got this amount of time. And what about you? And it's like, how do we have space for all the good voices? This comes back to my own personal thing where I hate a primary. I am hating a primary because I love all the people, but there it does give me hope that you tell an American that they're not allowed to do something, and then they'll go up. And I think most of us,
Renee, I think one of our other saving graces is going to be that this administration is just hubristic and incompetent, and their allies in the media, include CBS, are also like, if you're gonna try and spike Colbert, you don't let him have this big lame duck period where his show's going to be canceled and he can go out there and say whatever he wants. What are they going to do? Cancel him? So again, let's stay on this now. So
okay, to that point,
yeah, go ahead.
To that point, Trump got censored from X and goes and starts Truth Social or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's like, do they not even, it's like they don't even hear themselves. Like they just don't think.
Well, Renee, the hypocrisy doesn't matter because all that matters is power and having the biggest guns. So let's stay on this authoritarian thread here and talk about stuff going on at Trump's Pentagon this week. Now, a couple things I wanted to get on the record here. So, they are threatening to designate the AI company Anthropic a supply chain risk, a status normally reserved for foreign adversaries, over a dispute about the terms under which the military can use Claude, currently the only AI model available in classified military systems. Anthropic is willing to loosen restrictions, but wants guardrails against mass surveillance of Americans and fully autonomous weapons, while the Pentagon is demanding the right to use AI for all lawful purposes, a standard that critics note may diverge sharply from all ethical purposes. Now, particularly given that existing mass surveillance law doesn't contemplate AI, and the Pentagon already has broad authority to collect civilian data that AI could vastly supercharge. Now, sticking with Pete Hegseth and his Pentagon, Hegseth invited Doug Wilson, a self-described Christian nationalist and Hegseth's own pastor, to deliver a sermon at the Pentagon this week as part of a monthly worship series Hegseth launched last summer. Wilson's views go well beyond the controversial. He supports repealing women's right to vote, believes homosexuality should be a crime, co-authored a tract arguing that Southern slavery promoted racial harmony and was broadly beneficial to enslaved people, and advocates for a Christian theocracy in which non-Christians would be barred from holding public office or worshiping in public. His ultimate stated goal is a global Christian theocracy, achieved, he says, by peaceful means on a 250-year timeline. Now, critics say Hegseth's embrace of Wilson is part of a broader pattern of religious imposition across federal agencies since Trump returned to office, and a particular problem at the Pentagon, where the Secretary of Defense is supposed to be accountable to service members of all faiths and more, and none, rather. This is troubling in many aspects. I mean, where to begin? Like, okay, first of all, this is the Pentagon. They shouldn't be having religious services in there, period. Should they, Renee?
Okay. I was hoping you would start with me. Okay, back to my religious upbringing. I've shared this before. I knew how to vote and when to vote. Let's see. Let me rephrase that. I was told how to vote and when to vote in church. I knew that if there was a voting day, I needed to be there and click the R box. Okay. Like, I know you're not supposed to do that, but that's how I was raised. And so when I hear this, it's that whole, okay, watch the documentary Bad Faith. Every single person in the world needs to watch Bad Faith. There is my pitch. Watch it. It's on YouTube. There's a book. There's a podcast, because it's part of the narrative, right? Correct, Scott. This was supposed to be a nation that allowed all religious freedoms to people, right? Separate from preaching from the Pentagon, telling people that they can't do things, right? So, sorry, I'm trying not to be triggered in this moment, because there's just so much wrong there. And honestly, the thing that's painful, and Ethan is, I'm sure, knowing this because he's running as a Democrat, is at our community meetings in my rural town, they pray before meetings. And that is seen to be some signaling point of virtue, right? There, and yet, where is our integrity? Because I'm not seeing it many places by these same people who are saying the prayers at the beginning of the meeting. And it's like, first of all, read up on the Constitution and what we were founded on. Second of all, if you I'm not being coherent. Ethan, I think you need to.
Well, Ethan, let me ask. As somebody who was raised in the church, what does the Bible say about using AI for autonomous weapons system and mass surveillance?
Wait. Well, okay.
Go ahead.
Jesus sees everything, Scott.
Oh God.
Okay.
Mute her.
Quite frankly, the ultimate AI has already been there watching my sins every day. So
Oh my God.
I'm sorry. Theocracy.
No,
Let's just
good.
throw that out there.
It's very so my first thought on this is, well, like, what does the Bible say about mass surveillance and AI? Well, it refers to it as the beast that comes by land in the book of Revelation. And it dominates militarily and economically. And you cannot buy or sell unless you have the approval of the beast via its mark. Now, these are the kinds of things that John the Seer, the one who is credited with writing Revelation, was talking about. He was actually looking at the Roman Empire and its total control over the world, and that allegiance and subservience to its agenda, Pax Romana, where it's peace, it's domination, it's violence, it's exploitation. You had to buy in and be completely subservient to it if you wanted any space in the world as it existed. And John the Seer said, this thing is a beast that wars against humanity, and it wars against what is good. So that's what the Bible has to say about AI and mass surveillance.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Rome, because and the Pax Romana, and imposing your will by force, and so America notorious for that. We're currently strangling Cuba, right? They're in the middle of a humanitarian crisis, blackouts, food and medicine shortages. Yes. Airlines are canceling flights. Banks are cutting hours to conserve power. After a U.S.-engineered oil blockade cut off the island's last remaining suppliers. You remember, Venezuela halted shipments after Trump captured Nicolas Maduro in January, and Mexico followed under tariff threats. A UN human rights panel has condemned the blockade as incompatible with international law, while critics note the policy is widely seen as a cynical electoral play to shore up the Cuban-American vote in South Florida ahead of the midterms, crafted by Secretary of State Marco Rubio, himself the son of Cuban immigrants. This is while the administration simultaneously pursues broad U.S. oil interests in Venezuela. Speaking of places with oil interests, let's move to the Middle East, where even as U.S. and Iranian negotiators meet in Geneva for indirect nuclear talks mediated by Oman, describing the latest session as more constructive and agreeing on guiding principles toward a draft agreement, the Trump administration is simultaneously deploying its largest Middle East military force in decades. 2 aircraft carrier strike groups, 14 ships, over 10,000 additional service members, and dozens of aircraft, in an explicit warning that military strikes will follow if talks collapse. Now, experts warn that, unlike Iran's deliberately telegraphed retaliation after last June's U.S.-Israeli strikes on its nuclear facilities, Tehran has now signaled it would respond in ways designed to, quote, draw blood, potentially triggering an all-out regional conflict. Now, this is all while the Trump administration is simultaneously negotiating a nuclear cooperation deal with Saudi Arabia that would allow the kingdom to enrich uranium on its own soil, a risk that non-proliferation experts say stands in direct contradiction to the pressure being applied to Iran. Now, all of this is taking place amidst the backdrop that Trump is putting his picture on big government buildings all over the place, just like a banana republic dictator. This week, a large banner bearing his portrait and the phrase, "Make America Safe Again," has been installed on the facade of the Justice Department's headquarters on Pennsylvania Avenue, prompting criticism from Democrats, of course, and even Republican former FBI Director James Comey, who noted the irony that the building's own inscription reads, "Where law ends, tyranny begins," with critics arguing the display exemplifies Trump's broader effort to bend the historically independent agency to his personal and political will. So, Ethan, here we are. Here's all of it. Here is fascism laid out before us. We've got Trump's secret police. We've got cracking down on free and fair elections. We've got cracking down on a free and independent media. We've got giant military buildups. We've got the man's face going up on the sides of buildings like he's Saddam friggin' Hussein.
It's got everything.
Do we not see it yet?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I actually, right before we got on for this episode, I was meeting with the Floyd County Libertarian Party at a coffee shop downtown. And the amount of consensus that this is not a progressive conservative fight anymore, that this is boot-licking authoritarians and their cheerleaders versus the remaining embers of a republic, right? Like that's what we are at right now. That I like, as you're like running through like the buildup in the Middle East against Iran, preparing for that. I just like so vividly in my mind are the brutal arguments I had with family members and with people in my social circle. Like, well, he's going to end wars. He's going to be the peace president. And the rage, the simmering rage, because if you don't know a veteran who survived Afghanistan or Iraq, if you don't know somebody that was psychologically or physically maimed by those wars, if you are blind to the hundreds of thousands of people who were killed and are still being killed in the unrest that was created by those wars, and now you're like clapping and getting excited about a war against Iran, which, by the way, is going to be a different beast entirely than Afghanistan and Iraq were. Afghanistan has weathered the West before. It knew that the Taliban knew they had to pull up into the mountains and wait for the West to run out of money and get new people elected. And it went exactly like they knew it would. And they're back in power like they were before. Like Iraq, yes, we got rid of Saddam, and then it created ISIS, and it created the whole chain of catastrophes that couldn't be foreseen, except that we knew that what was going to happen could not be foreseen or controlled. And now the idea that this senile, mentally unstable man is going to try to save himself and his long association and partying with the most contemptible group of pedophiles in modern history, and he's going to start a war to try to salvage his reputation and deflect attention onto a new crisis he created, because Venezuela wasn't a big enough crisis. Killing Cuba isn't a big enough crisis. Trying to suppress the vote and take away women's right to vote with the SAVE Act isn't a big enough crisis. No, we've got to start nuclear conflict in the Middle East to save my neck. And I hope to God we find a millstone big enough to tie around this man and bring him down, because he does not care who gets killed. He doesn't care who gets hurt. He doesn't care whose money is taken away. This is a fight against authoritarians and those who are keeping alive the last embers of a republic. It is not left versus right. It is bottom versus the top. And that is what we are here for.
Yeah, Renee, I remember with Iraq, at least the Bush administration, for all their many, many faults, and they at least lied us into the thing. They at least spent months making up a story why we needed to go to war. We don't even get that now.
Well, okay.
Buy me dinner first.
Again, as the woman in the panel, Ethan is right, but I see a slightly different view. Mm-hmm. If you look at the countries that we're talking about, they have been suppressing women's rights. Mm-hmm. And that's what the Heritage Foundation, that's what the Bad Faith, Trump, that's one of the ways that they function. And when we went and left Afghanistan, right, mm-hmm. and we have the pictures of all the people trying to get out, right? Going back to when I mentioned who took over when Epstein right? What are you going to do? You're going to go to the spaces where the voices are the most silenced, and you're going to try to silence them in the voices where they aren't. So women specifically, I know we have a lot of minorities in our country that are being attacked in a plethora of ways, but they're trying to do it to women's voices too. And they're using the Middle East. Women can't speak up. Venezuela, women are suppressed. And the highlighting of the woman in Venezuela who got the
the Nobel Prize,
Nobel
Maria Machado.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, that makes it look like, what's it make it look like? Oh, that a woman has a voice there. No. She gave her voice to Trump. Okay. So if we're talking about what we're discussing, I see two things. We've got the behind the curtain, right? You've got Oz you've got the wizard, and you've got people like, I'm going to say it, Aaron Houchin, who sees behind the curtain and wants a piece of what the production is. Because like you said, we're setting up here, we're setting up our military's whatever, right? It's a stage. It's a stage because we have a stooge in office. Okay.
Stage for stooge.
A stage for seriously. And then you've got people who can see behind the other side of the curtain, and we're like, no, call out the truth. Let's call it what it is. I love that Ethan, when you were reading what was going on, and Ethan brought up former military who did this before. This is a freaking joke.
Yeah.
It's horrific. And I know you caught my pause, but I have hope knowing that we aren't cemented in yet, right? Because what Trump and his administration does is he says it, he takes it away, he takes the name off of something, brings it back, makes the people who follow him think that he's done something great when all he did was undo it to begin with and then redo it, maybe even a little worse. It throws freaking name on it. He's not doing anything. It's not set in stone. We aren't building a city on a hill. He's the house, if we're using a biblical reference, building on sand, right? Thank goodness. But this is calling out the wizard behind the curtain, I think, is a way not only to bring some hope and peace to some of the people in our communities, because there are others who, like me, the first time around, I didn't want to watch the news. I didn't want to know what was going on. I didn't want to hear things. I didn't want to look at it because I didn't know what to do. And I think to speak to that, to everybody who is feeling that way, we've got people like Ethan running. We've got people like you doing podcasts like this. We've got people uniting and collaborating, and the Indiana Rural Summit and Adam with the 9th District. He is so helpful. We've got people trying. We've got people doing. And if you know how to call it out and say, here's how we can move forward, and here's the hope piece, then I think we bring some calm, because what they try to do is bring chaos. And they do it on the weekends especially. I love, back to Stephen Colbert, he's like, do you see what they did this weekend? And then he just like lists this whole right. So I have hope knowing that there's not he sent some people over there and he's spending our money, wasting people's time. I just think there's a better way to look at it.
Well, yeah. So listen, you mentioned a lot of, we've laid out the case that we're entering this authoritarian moment, and you mentioned some good Democrats who are out there fighting against this thing, but like, really, where is the party structure? Where's the infrastructure? Where the hell is the leadership right now? And we've got to talk about our lack of a strong opposition party. And I'm afraid that Democrats, individual Democrats get it. The party leadership does not get it. Now, the people see this. We had a New York Times focus group release this week of 13 Democratic and independent voters, where they found deep fury at the Democratic Party establishment, describing it as, quote, spineless, paralyzed, and full of sellouts and suckers, with particular anger directed at the 8 Senate Democrats who voted to end the government shutdown without extracting any concessions, and at leadership's repeated capitulations to Trump on ICE and immigration. By contrast, the same voters expressed strong enthusiasm for Democratic socialists like Bernie Sanders, AOC, and New York Mayor Zoran Mamdani, with all 13 people saying they would choose a progressive over a moderate given the choice, reflecting a growing conviction that the party's establishment wing is just not just ineffective, but actively complicit in the conditions that created Trump in the first place. Now, we've got some Democratic organizations working to build up a real resistance. There's a new super PAC called American Priorities. It's positioning itself as a direct financial counterweight to AIPAC, committing millions to progressive primary challengers who oppose unconditional U.S. support for Israel, beginning with Nida Alam in North Carolina and Reverend Frederick Haynes in Texas, both of whom are also backed by the Justice Democrats. Now, that organization is announcing a slate of 12 progressive primary challengers in 2026, pitching candidates who will refuse corporate PAC money, including AIPAC money and donations from the crypto and AI lobbies, a direct rebuke to what this group calls a Democratic Party captured by corporate interests. The slate includes former Representative Cori Bush making a comeback bid in Missouri, Sacramento Council member Mai Vang challenging a longtime California incumbent, and Dallas pastor Frederick Douglass Haynes III running for an open Texas seat vacated by Jasmine Crockett. They're all running on the argument that this moment demands fighters, not institutionalists. Well, who's the biggest institutionalist of them all? House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, who late last week got called out by progressive commentator and one of my favorites, Wajahat Ali, who embarrassed Jeffries about his refusal to abolish ICE, citing the agency's plans to convert warehouses into detention camps and barbaric overcrowding conditions. Jeffries declined to take a hardline stance and instead spoke about reining in ICE through negotiations with Republicans. Ali argues this represents Democratic leadership failures to seize an opportunity during this partial DHS shutdown, contrasting it with progressive primary winner Ana Lilia Mejia's success in New Jersey a couple weeks ago after embracing both this abolish ICE message and pro-Palestine positions despite heavy AIPAC spending against her moderate opponent. Ethan, where's party leadership?
It is in the nature of power to protect itself and to choose safety, whatever it believes is safety, right? And you know, I not to overdo it, but I always think of moments of incredible progress in our nation's history, right? Women's suffrage, civil rights, and that the powerful always said, not now, slower, you know, like, be patient. It's not the right time. This isn't the right, like, you're asking for too much. Always, always, always. It doesn't matter what the ask. That's if you're actually moving the dial towards justice, the powers that there's a reason. I've been saying this a lot during my campaign so far. All injustice is rooted in an imbalance of power. All injustice is rooted in an imbalance of power. And so if you've got powerful people, even if they're like minority leader, Hakeem Jeffries, they've got power. And if there's injustice, the power is not being distributed very well. And to fix that, you have to redistribute power. You have to empower people that have been historically deprived of it. And if you want to be the one that does that, you are going to upset the power balance. And it's going to be you. You're the one that's upsetting the power imbalance. And that's a really hot seat to be in if you have in your mind that I am pursuing a career as a politician, right? And so many people, like, my career, I'm pursuing a career as a politician. Would you stop? Would you stop pursuing a career as a politician? And would you start pursuing justice? Would you start pursuing equality?
Yes.
Like, is it so much to ask that your priority not be getting elected next time and your priority be doing the right thing? Like, well, I'm gonna upset people. Good. That has historically been necessary to do good things. It has historically been necessary to upset the status quo to create justice. And you can do that with integrity. You can do that honoring the people that elected you, but you can also do it being like, I have to do this because it's the right thing to do. And if doing the right thing means I don't get into office next time, so be it.
And Renee, like, if you were pursuing just cynically a career in politics and you want to get elected, listen to what the people are saying. Look at that New York Times forum. Every Democrat they talk to says we want a progressive, we want a fighter, we don't want any more of your bland, meek, centrist oatmeal slop. What do you make of it?
Okay. There's another role if you don't win, right? I go back to my personal favorite saying is a leader leads, whether you have the role and the title and the position. If you're running for office right now, you're already a leader. If you're doing it like if you're not a career politician, right? Like I've had people, they're like, oh, Bernie's just a career politician. It's like, Bernie's been saying the same thing since the 70s. Like you could pull his speech from his first speech and compare it to yesterday's, and they're nearly identical. And it's like that. And then you've got people, again, I'm going to pull from local experience. I lived here in Salem. I moved away for 5 years and I moved back, and I found people that I knew growing up my whole life were doing some things that weren't benefiting our county. And I'm like, I grieved that, right? Yeah. Because it's like, at what point do even people that I know choose to do the wrong thing to make their bank account bigger? It's like, I'm not ever going to be that person. And I thought maybe ignorantly that other people weren't those people. So I feel like it's not hard to do the right thing. It's brave. You're capable of it. And we need every single person right now who knows what the right thing is to stand up and do it. Like,
yeah.
Just, we've got,
you go ahead.
I think every bit of corruption needs uprooted right now. I don't care what side it's on. I don't care, like Republican, Democrat, whoever it is, if you are not standing up for your constituents, for your neighbors, and you are not looking for positive advancement of your community, and that's not what you're working for, then get out the way. Like, get out.
Yes.
It doesn't, yes. I don't care what your name is, or like, we don't have time for that. We are in, as much as I felt this in the last election, I feel it even more so now. The upcoming election, if we don't make strides forward, if we don't make this a moment where we have some reset, we risk losing our democracy and our futures. And it is absolutely that serious. It doesn't mean every single person needs to be the front face of that, but every positive action counts right now. Mm-hmm. And that's what we need.
Yeah, Renee, I think a lot of people are more concerned about having their face on the front of things than about doing the damn work. And let's turn the corner. Let's talk about the intersection of of national politics and what we're talking about right now in Indiana politics, in a section I like to call the crossroads. And boy, we are at it here in Indiana as a Democratic Party. Now, Democrats are seeing an extraordinary wave of grassroots energy heading into the midterm elections. Record candidate filings in Hamilton County, a record number of delegate candidates in Elkhart County. Here in Monroe County, we had more people file to be delegates to the state party convention than we have seats. contested races in all 25 state Senate districts for the first time in 50 years, and the largest number of contested state House races since 1992, a surge driven by activists who have concluded that the party's chronic underperformance in a state that isn't as red as it looks is a problem of participation, not ideology. But in Marion County, the state's most populous Democratic stronghold, the party establishment is moving aggressively to strangle that energy in its crib because that energy threatens its grip on power. After organizers spent months recruiting roughly 200 new candidates to run for precinct committee chairs and state party convention delegate seats, the Marion County Democratic Party, chaired by Mila Eldridge, waited until a week after the filing deadline and then challenged over 100 of them, citing a party rule requiring that candidates have voted in a recent Democratic primary. Many of the challenged candidates had voted Republican in 2024 specifically to oppose Mike Braun and Donald Trump in that primary in a well-organized but unsuccessful effort. Party leadership had assured organizers it would not comb through voting histories, and the rules explicitly allow the county chair to certify candidates as Democrats on a case-by-case basis. Now, a lot of these folks reached out to Eldridge before the filing deadline trying to get their paperwork in order, but she ignored them, refusing to respond to certification requests and proceeding with the challenges anyway. A subsequent hearing before the Marion County Election Board Friday, described by one organizer as 4 hours of shameless gaslighting, resulted in the removal of dozens of loyal, active Democrats from the ballot after being given 2 minutes each to make their case. The organizers' conclusion: the Marion County Democratic Party doesn't want voters choosing their own precinct chairs and convention delegates because those delegates will choose the party's Secretary of State candidate and would rather keep those seats vacant so they can fill them by appointment, not with people, accountable to the population, but accountable to the machine. Now, I understand you guys are both active in the Democratic Party, have roles. Ethan, you're seeking, an elected position as a Democrat, but like in your case, especially Ethan, it's got to feel like the brand is working against grassroots candidates like you with shit like this.
People are really sick of politics as usual. And people are really, really sick of feeling like even whenever they take the time out of their lives to get involved and to do the work and I'm a delegate this year. I filed to be a delegate. I had to take my lunch break to shoot across town to get to the courthouse to register. It's an investment of time. It's putting yourself out there. It is a building block of building a political movement in our state that has long been neglected, and that people have felt like it doesn't make a difference. How do I make a difference? I don't know how to make a difference. So when we see things like this, it is so discouraging. And I've been following various people who live in Marion County and who have friends that have been affected by this or have been affected by this directly themselves. And it is an open fact that with our primary system in Indiana, people regularly will pick up a primary sheet for the other party because they want to block what they see as the most odious part of the party that they are against. People have been doing that in Indiana my entire life. I grew up hearing about people doing that. I had friends who their first year voting, their parents were like, get a Democrat ballot and make sure that Hillary Clinton isn't the nominee in 2008 because we can beat Barack Obama. But that was
I remember that.
I very clearly remember that happening. That has been done forever in this state. Both sides do it. So the fact that was used as a basis to purge motivated grassroots delegates from getting involved is, I just want, you're not being serious, and you don't expect to be taken seriously by people that are perfectly aware why that happens and why people that are got their name in the game and are showing up and are running to be delegates. You're like, well, how is it that this person didn't vote for the Democratic primary last time? It's like, why. So how about you be clear about why you're doing this? How about you be clear about what your motive is in purging these delegates? Because it is undermining trust. It is undermining motivation. And as the imperial boomerang goes, like, this stuff comes back around. This stuff comes back around. And if we have played enough stupid games, can we please recognize that we don't like the prices?
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, Renee, I think this Marion County issue goes back to the state has been the state Democratic Party is run by the same machine, and it has been run by the same machine for 30 plus years now. I want to tie this thing back to Reverend Jackson before, and he talked about the direction of the party, and he wanted to take things in a working class rainbow coalition direction, and was opposed by this Democratic Leadership Council, right? The DLC, Democrats for the Leisure Class. Well, you know, that's the Bill Clinton direction of the party. That's the Evan Bayh direction of the party in Indiana. And the Evan Bayh machine still, to this day, controls nodes across the state. They control the Marion County party through their very large, rotten hog set branch, of which Maya Eldridge is a bud. I don't know. Can you speak to that without getting in trouble?
I can only speak from personal experience. So I'm going to go at it from that. There is someone that I value very much who helped make my office here in Washington County possible, who signed up to be a delegate and was one of the people in Marion County who was removed from that and was challenged. And what I found out in that process was, and to play devil's advocate for a moment, you know, they have 500 people. That's a lot. I don't know 500. Well, okay, I do know 500 people. But like, if I had to find 500 people who aligned with my beliefs, and I was in charge of making sure those people were the ones who were going to show up on June 6th to be a delegate, I would look a little more closely. And so what happened in this situation was exactly what Ethan said. We live in rural communities. I personally pulled a Republican primary ballot because we didn't have a Democrat primary one year anyway. And so I am secretary for my local party and had to have my chairman write a letter of, you know, thumbs up so that I could be put on the ballot as a Democrat. Because in rural areas, it is that thing. It's not just presidential, but, you know, maybe it's our mayor. We only had Republican mayors. And so I wanted to weigh in on that. That being said, if you look at the voter registration, their voting history, which is what the rules, let's speak to the rules for a second, right? Mm-hmm. We can get emotional. We can get frustrated and we can see behind the curtain, right? But then you have to use the guardrails, the rules, and the responsibilities to hold people to honor and integrity. Mm-hmm. So unfortunately, in this case, though I think this person would be a phenomenal delegate, they had moved from Washington County up there, wasn't known personally, did have a letter, but like Ethan said, wasn't able to make the hearing. And even had like I was in conversations with them last week, and I was like, you know, it's like when you fill out a you need a letter of recommendation. It's like, here, I can prove to you, because if I was the party chairman of Marion County and I had to worry about 500 people, and I went through and saw 100 of them were iffy, I don't know. Like, I don't live there. I wasn't even in the room. I just know this one situation. And yeah, you check, that's a lot of responsibility. So I feel, though, that in this moment, we are in a moment where corruption is rising to the top. And as it rises, if we see it and can skim that off and move to the next thing, that's what we need to worry about, right?
Yes, right. We as Democrats, Renee, cannot defeat the entrenched corruption of Trump and MAGA and the Republican Party with slightly less corrupt corruption. It does not
Correct.
fly. It's not going to work. People see through the bull crap. So
Yes.
Let's turn the corner. We're running behind here as we are. Not a ton of Indiana focused stories this week, and frankly, I've got a lot to get to. At the State House this week. I'll be speaking with Katie Rector from Mad Voters at 2 p.m. today for this week at the end of State House with Mad Voters. We're going to go through a lot of that stuff. But a couple things I want to stick on here at the crossroads. That Republicans have their divisions too. There is a new PAC called No Quarter. It's threatening to primary the 21 Indiana Republicans who joined Democrats in December to block Trump's mid-cycle redistricting gambit that would have flipped the state's congressional delegation likely from 7-2 to 9-0 Republican, framing the holdouts as rhinos who betrayed both their party and the president. And, another thing at the crossroad this week. So we had some severe weather go through. An EF2 tornado tore through my county, Monroe County, and the Bloomington area Thursday night. In February,
my daughter was
Hoosiers
at work.
don't typically, take shelter
Right
from
there.
twisters. Literally 2 blocks from my brother-in-law's house. Very, very scary stuff. This is a second EF0 tornado touchdown in Sullivan County. Residents are being directed to Indiana 201 to report damage, to get a hold of their insurance companies and whatnot. But this process may be complicated by the Trump administration's decision to freeze FEMA deployments during the partial government shutdown, halting over 300 disaster responders who were preparing for assignments, even though the disaster relief fund that pays for such work is entirely unaffected by the shutdown. A former FEMA chief of staff called the move reckless disregard for communities recovering from FEMA-supported disasters, while an agency official put it more bluntly, quote, "It's yet another way they continue to bleed us out and kill the mission." Just a very quick thought on this, if you will, Renee. I know you were talking about your daughter was.
My daughter she works at Outback up there. It was right beside, right? There. I had called her an hour before and I was like, where are you? And will you be safe? And all of that. So this is money speaks, right? And so the administration does everything for money, meaning they'll control with it. They'll either take it away or they'll pour into. And this goes along the lines of our, where did my word go? National Guard, right? There we go. Follow the money. How are we helping our neighbors? What are we even doing here, right? And to speak to that, it's we need to get into the room where the decisions are being made, because the president doesn't have ultimate control, right? He doesn't. And we're talking about our state. We're talking about, we need to get people like Ethan and Nick and Hunter and Byron and these people in the room where the decisions are being made, so that when disasters happen in our state, when things are going on, where the decisions are being made, we have people in the room who are actually speaking for their neighbors, their community.
Yeah. So, I wanted to mention the State House, like we talked about here. And I said I'm going to be here with Katie Rector at 2 p.m. to go through a lot of these things. But I did want to mention real quick that there are some bills that died this week that are worth pointing out. Some small victories. So, there was a good bill that we wanted to see pass die. That was Senate Bill 85 that would have protected Hoosier patients' homes and paychecks from medical debt collectors. But there were some bad bills that died, and these are our victories. So, failing to advance was one that would have codified binary sex definitions through Indiana code, basically erasing trans people from existence. Another bill would have allowed Hoosiers to basically put bounties on their neighbors over the possession of abortion-inducing medication. And finally, in a win for local communities, a data center and utility siting bill that would have allowed large projects to override local officials' objections. also died without a hearing after intense pushback. We did get another win in that the syringe exchange program is likely to be continued for another 5 years. The House passed this one in a bipartisan fashion, sending it back to the Senate with amendments, so they'll have to go through concurrence this week. Also, there is a House Bill 1002 is still under consideration. This thing looks likely to pass. It was one of the Republicans' priority bills, reshaping how utilities charge customers. Now, they did shoot down a lot of good Democratic amendments that really could have put some teeth behind this thing and done good work for Hoosiers. But overall, the bill is decent and still likely to pass. But, you know, the big controversy in the State House this week, there's a couple of them, but the Republicans slipped an amendment into an election bill. It wasn't there the entire time, the entire session. They slipped this in, after the fact, without public testimony, that would cut the state's early voting period from 28 days to 16, a change that would take effect as soon as this May's primary. Now, of course, Republicans are using some sort of voter fraud BS to justify this. Now, it appears to have been imported wholesale from Trump's repeatedly debunked claims of widespread election fraud, which Indiana's own legislative leaders have rejected. And the Republican sponsor of the amendment admitted under questioning that he has no data showing a longer early voting period has actually contributed to fraud, a finding consistent with, and I think Ethan mentioned this earlier, Indiana's own record of just 59 criminal election fraud convictions over the last 4 decades. Democrats warn this reduction could disenfranchise working voters and create election day bottlenecks, pointing out that roughly 90,000 Hoosiers voted during that period in the last midterm alone. Ethan, thoughts on this one?
No, my God. No, it's voter suppression. They are scared. Everything that they are doing about elections reveals how scared they are. They did not think they would lose the redistricting fight. They really believe the rhinos who support the president and his administration. And these are the rhinos. These are people without conservative principles. These are people who do not actually have a foundation in conservative politics. They are reactionaries. They are fighting culture war. They are living for the rush to power centered around the strong man that is Donald Trump. Because real conservatives reject federal overreach. Real conservatives stand up for local control. Real conservatives believe in the right to vote. And so, like, cutting the early voting in half, cutting, last year they cut college identification. You can't use a college ID to vote anymore. Which, and I know you probably know this story, but I was speaking to some of the IU students, IU Bloomington, who went to give testimony when they passed that law, and they were confronted by a legislature after they gave testimony. He's like, "Listen, kids, you don't understand. We really do need to, do this law." And he asked the legislator, my friend who gave testimony, asked the legislator, "Sir, do you know what a college ID looks like?" And showed him his Bloomington ID, and the guy was like, "Oh, this has a picture on it." Didn't know, voted against it anyway. Everything that they are doing, from the SAVE Act, cutting early voting, trying to make it harder for people to vote, trying to kill ranked choice voting, killing ranked choice voting, which doesn't exist in our state yet. But they're afraid that it could, because people are excited about the idea of not having to choose between their turd sandwich and the douchebag. Like, they would like to be able to choose a candidate that reflects their principles and their values. And to the power structure, that is an imminent threat. They want to do everything they can to limit people's access to the polls, to limit their ability to choose candidates that actually reflect their values, and make sure that people keep having to choose between someone they despise and someone they fear. And that they want you to have to keep making those choices between someone you despise and someone you fear. And, like, if we can expand voting, if we can, for the love of God, create ranked choice voting in Indiana, I was meeting with the libertarians this morning. There are plenty of principled libertarians that would really like to break the duopoly in our country and in our state. and see options open up for other choices. Lots of progressives would like to break the duopoly and create principled choices other than a two-party system that doesn't reflect the values of most people, which is why voter turnout is so damn low. We can fix this.
And yeah, and Renee, like as Ethan spoke to with the college ID, Indiana was the first state, I believe, in 2008 that put the voter ID law through in the first place, even despite the non-existent voter fraud. Right? We have the stats for it. Our election hours are already remarkably shorter than many other states. The polls close at 6:00 local time on election day. That does not give people time to get there after work. In a lot of states, it's 7 or 8. Every day we do election day coverage. You watch it. Indiana's the first place to close.
Yeah. So a couple things. How do we change that? What is the checklist that has to happen to get change, right? So first, we need to get some people in the room who can make the change. Second of all, we need to be louder about what needs changed. And we need voters to show up and say, I want the time to show up. And speaking to the duality thing, right? I'm not against like libertarian or independent or anything like that. But there's also a part of me that feels that if we realized picking an R or a D lane did not mean you were married to any of those things. It's a chess move. It's a stair step. Mm-hmm. Like I feel personally that the two lanes were the importance of them or the use of them is to gather more people in alignment to vote in a certain thing. Mm-hmm. That does not mean that I think that we don't need corruption out of the way. Right? Like I feel like there's room for both of those things. Mm-hmm. And just like we say, when you go to the primaries, we have Democrats who have pulled Republican ballots. Mm-hmm. Why? Because we feel that our voice can help make a change in that area. And so we've done that. If we pull that idea into a normal voting day, same, right? Like maybe we also are one of the only 6. There are only 6 states in the nation that have straight party ticket voting. We are one of those. So for any of us to look, it's Indiana, Kentucky, Michigan, Oklahoma, either Arkansas or Alabama now, and then South Carolina. And it's like, so anybody who's running as a Democrat who has won in those states, that's the data we also need to kind of take a peek at. How did they do it? First of all. Second of all, how do we make that change first? And how do we get the information to the people that need to vote a different way, saying you don't just have to click the button or color in the Republican straight ticket box. Look through the whole thing and vote who you want to vote for, because you aren't married to, that doesn't make you a Democrat, right? Like going back to the rules thing, if you want to be called a Democrat, you've got to vote in 2 Democrat primaries. So you're allowed to go over and vote for a Democrat, and you're not going to necessarily be one. But I don't personally feel that the way forward is going to be by splitting up the 2 lanes that we have, but finding how to align into one with the right people. But maybe I'm wrong.
I hate the 2-party system with a passion. I want to burn it to the ground. It is the worst thing in the world. What was it? One place, though, where Democrats and Republicans agreed in the state house anyway, I don't think the population is on board with this, is in creating a Northwest Indiana Stadium Authority. A state house committee unanimously advanced legislation creating this authority that would help the Chicago Bears build a domed stadium in Hammond. A deal that would have Indiana taxpayers finance construction of this thing through bonds, with the Bears retaining all stadium revenues for 35 years and then receiving the building for $1 once the bonds are paid off. It's a
Go Bears.
structure, that should raise eyebrows given the overwhelming evidence that public stadium financing rarely delivers promised economic returns, and the Bears aren't even committing to the move. They're simultaneously stringing along Illinois officials who say negotiations there remain active, using the Indiana legislation as leverage in a 3-year saga that has seen the team pivot repeatedly between staying in the city, suburban Arlington Heights, and now in Indiana and Hammond. The proposed site is a golf course built over an old industrial landfill within steps of an oil refinery. Sounds like a lovely neighborhood. The team has not released renderings. Listen, I'm a Bears fan.
Bears.
I do not want any part of this.
Go Bears.
I'm a Northwest. I grew up in Northwest Indiana. The Bears should play in the city. They should play outdoors. This is enough to make me a Packers fan. I swear to God. Hey. Listen, they're publicly owned. They
Shit's
play
getting
outdoors
real, man.
time like real men. I'm
true.
sorry. Like I don't want any part of it. And like the Republicans in the state house are all about this. Hammond Mayor Tom McDermott, a Democrat, loves this idea. These things never work. Never.
They don't. Ask Vegas. Vegas brought the Raiders in. Ask them how that's going for them. Like it is a huge financial black hole. Like it always is. It always is.
Money.
Yeah.
Money.
Yep.
Money. And I have to say, I don't like the two-party system either. Like, I think you should vote for the candidate. I have to go back to that because I don't want my soundbite to be wrong. I think you should vote for the person with integrity. I get what you're saying.
And
anyway.
I'll just throw on there as well that I believe that breaking the two-party system will make the two main parties stronger. I believe it will. Because if they can no longer depend on, well, you're gonna go with the other side, then they're gonna have to actually make an appealing platform. They're gonna actually have to do what voters want them to do. Go ahead.
And voters across the spectrum, I think, are you're right. But voters across the spectrum, I think, the real people, not just the party apparatchiks, want to see this thing. Yep. Like we mentioned, Democrats are split, Republicans have their own internal divisions. People would vote for. It would have a moderating influence in general to have ranked choice voting. Now, we do have to move on to our last story of the day, as we only have a few minutes left this week. So, listen, all of this is going on. We talked about the authoritarianism. We talked about the Epstein file. We talked all the bad stuff in the national news, all the bad stuff going on in Indiana. Well, growing up in this time, not pleasant. And the stats are saying so. So we saw a breakdown in this year's State of the Child. This was released, I want to say, by Indiana Youth Institute. Indiana ranks 25th nationally in overall child well-being, according to the latest Kids Count data book. With the state showing improvement in education, driven by record high graduation rates and improved early literacy scores. The irony that I can't read while trying to talk about literacy. Significant challenges, though, remain. Youth suicides increased. 1 in 5 children lack consistent access to nutritious food. And while reports of persistent sadness and suicidal thoughts declined, mental health concerns persist, with social media identified as a contributing factor. Now, along those lines, state lawmakers are hashing out a proposed social media restriction for kids, racing to salvage this bill in the final week of the session after a procedural dispute sent the legislation back to square one. Senate President Pro Tem Rod Bray says he's optimistic a plan requiring parental consent for minors 16 and under to access social media will still pass, with lawmakers also working to bulletproof it against the First Amendment challenges that have sunk similar laws in other states. All this happens in the backdrop. Monday, hundreds of students descended on the State House to advocate on a variety of issues affecting young people, with bullying front and center. Of course, the visit was carried by bitter irony. The two bills they came to support, one that would have redefined bullying to make it more reportable, and another that would have created local prevention committees and given families a path to appeal unresolved cases beyond their school district, never received a hearing. The kids getting a tough lesson in how government really works. You know what Indiana lawmakers really want for the kids? To put them to work. They're moving to eliminate the state's youth employment system, a database that tracks employers and minors on their payrolls, despite warnings from the Department of Labor that doing so would reduce the efficiency of inspections for child labor law compliance. The change, pushed by Senator Linda Rogers, who owns a golf course registered to employ minors and previously sponsored bills expanding teen work hours and lowering the alcohol service age, comes as Indiana has steadily weakened child labor protections since 2019, and child labor violations involving hazardous jobs hit a 9-year high in 2023. Now, supporters are arguing reporting requirements are burdensome to employers who might otherwise hire more teens, things like the meat packing industry. Right. Oh yeah. The world's tiniest violin. Ethan, they really want these kids, in the mines, it seems like.
Yeah. And I mean, this is speaking as somebody who started working when I was 16 years old. I was working for a family business when I was 16 years old, right? I was in carpet cleaning. We are admitting that we are trying to shut down kids' hopes and dreams. Like, we're like, get a job, you bum. Like, you're 15 years old. What are you doing with your life? You could serve booze. You should be serving booze. You're 15 years old. You're a grown up. Like, you should be working at this golf course, serving these retirees alcohol. Like, what are we talking about here? It is a loss of what childhood. And to be clear, teens are children. And the Epstein class out there.
Take note, President Trump. Yes.
Teens are children. And they were like, well, rather than investing in what you are best at, rather than investing in where your hopes and dreams and aspirations lie, rather than like making sure you see yourself as somebody with agency who has the ability to make an impact in your community and pursue what you are good at, we want you to get a job at the golf course and start serving booze. Like, yes, I realize that that's what being good for business is, but it might have something to do with the mental health crisis and what kids are going through these days.
Renee, 2 minutes here. Yes. Your thoughts?
2 minutes. Okay. I also started working when I was 16, worked at Taco Bell and made $5.15 an hour. And the fact that was in 1998. So I don't care to say how old I am. And when you,
not me,
I can't. I'm kidding. Okay. So like, there's a lot there. Kids, a lot of families have their teens work because they don't make enough money themselves. So our nation doesn't make it so that people have a living wage. Mm-hmm. I personally can speak to myself. I wanted call waiting on our phone so that my mom could call me after school and I could still talk to my friends. So I paid $10 a month. Whenever I got my license, I had to pay the insurance difference on our own car in order to drive because my mom couldn't afford it. She was a single mom for a hot minute, and then I had a stepdad and all of that, but they thought it also taught me responsibility. Well, the facts are we didn't have the money to do it otherwise. Mm-hmm. So we still 25, 30 years later are having that same issue in our communities. We don't pay parents a living wage. So there's that aspect, right? And then speaking to this helps with human trafficking. If we're going to go in there, how many teenagers or young women or even any young person doesn't feel safe enough to speak up for themselves, their own autonomy? I worked, again, at Taco Bell. I was old enough to close on Friday and Saturday nights because my mom only wanted me working on the weekends so that I could keep my school grades up, right? So we closed at 3 a.m. Well, at 2 a.m, almost every Saturday, this one person, a man, would come through naked in the drive-thru. Every week. I'm serious. It was a man. And the guy knew that I was going to be in the drive-thru. Okay. What do you do with that? I didn't know what to do with that. I felt like I was doing something wrong, even if I went to, now, again, this was 1998, 1999. And I have taught my children to speak up and if there were a situation like that, but I didn't feel safe enough to. So what are we doing to children? What are we doing when they're being told they have to go to work because a lot of them, their family doesn't have the money? And I was not told how much my education mattered. And so, because it was more important in where I was being raised for me to go to a Bible college instead of an actual college, when I earned the core 40 degree and could have gone to an Indiana State college and all of that. But I wasn't talked to about that, even in school.
Mm-hmm.
And how many kids still aren't?
Mm-hmm.
And
so much
social media bull crap that was brought up. Parents aren't going to enforce that. We have created a society.
Yeah.
Right. We have created a society where you keep poor people poor, make them work their faces off, exhaust them. They can't survive on one job. How many homes can survive with one person working and raise your children and pay attention to what they're doing? We need to fix it completely.
So much. Well, listen, that's all the time we've got for today. So I want to, I want to give Ethan a chance to talk about how folks can help him fix things in the State House. Shamelessly promote your campaign before we
shameless promotion of the campaign. Go. We are having a fundraiser on Wednesday. Message me if you live in the Floyd County, Harrison County, Washington County area. I would love to give you the details on that. It's our first for real fundraiser. Our next town hall is in Harrison County at the Harrison County Foundation building on Sunday, March 1st from 6 to 8 o'clock. We just had a town hall yesterday at the Carnegie Center in downtown New Albany. Incredible turnout. We had almost 40 people in the room. Nice. Great questions, great interaction. And yeah, my website is ethanforstatesenate.com, spelled out like real phonetic words. You can donate to my campaign there via ActBlue, or you can see my P.O. box if you'd like to mail a check directly. We are going to flip this district if I have anything to say about it. People, like, again, I met with the Libertarians this morning. We had several long voting Republicans in the town hall last night in downtown New Albany. And they're just tired of the authoritarianism and the blatant disregard for constitutional law. And they want something different, and they want somebody that's going to represent our community. And that's what I'm here to do. So if you can donate to us, we're doing what we're calling a minimum wage, maximum impact campaign. But the minimum wage has been $7.25 an hour in Indiana since 2009, which nobody can live on. But $7.25 a month, if you can donate it to our campaign, we're trying to get 500 people to sign up to do that. We are on our way with that. We're at about 15% of our goal, and we just launched this campaign. And and if you can make that donation, and we can get regular recurring donations from now until the election, that's how we're going to win. We are rejecting PAC money. We're rejecting corporate donations. This is about people-powered grassroots campaign because I'm accountable to you, the voters, and not to special interests.
You'll love to see it. Renee, how about you? Shamelessly promote yourself or one of your many, many organizations. No?
Okay, I'm going to go with the community action. We have Indiana Community Action Network and Indiana Community Action Coalition, the 501c3 and the C4. If you are an individual, have a campaign, are a candidate, are an organization or whatever, you can become a member.
And we're okay.
No.
Indiana
losing
Community
Renee.
Action Network.
Okay. There we
of
are.
Washington County.
Heck yeah.
Communityaction.org.
Fantastic. Yeah, sorry that broke up a little bit. We're gonna I'll try and get some links into the show notes for folks. Now you can find me online at HoosLeft.us on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky. You can also find me at Who's Left on your other social media sites. Please, again, Follow Progressive Indiana Network on the social media sites on Blue Sky and TikTok. It's PIN Indiana. Thanks again to our guest today. Thank you for joining us. One last reminder to please consider supporting this project with a paid subscription at progressiveindiana.net. If you're available, we are doing lots of great work here. I'm going to be back later this afternoon with Mad Voters to talk about all about the legislation going through at the State House. Back tonight for a virtual town hall with 9th District Congressional candidate Kyle Rourke. On Monday, Derek Holder's Hold 'em Accountable podcast will be speaking with State Senate candidate Lasima Packett. And on Wednesday, he'll be back with State House candidate Kumba Kebe. In between, I will be live on Tuesday night at 7 p.m. with retired professor and activist with Jewish Voice for Peace, Daniel A. Siegel. Check out all of them, some of them. Lots of good stuff around here. We're all working hard doing it for you. But in the meantime, that is all for us today. Thank you for joining us. I'm Scott Aaron Rogers. Love each other, Indiana.